Good evening. I call to order the City of Gerald Special Call City Council meeting Tuesday, August 11th at 7 p.m. First item on the agenda is a roll call. We have all members present. We will now have an invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Councilwoman Clausen.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening with thanks for our opportunity to serve the citizens of Gerald. Lord, we're grateful to have had the opportunity to join Gerald ISD as they celebrated a remarkable 110 years. We ask that you keep the staff, students, and all the citizens safe as they begin their journey for a new school year tomorrow. Lord, we ask for your wisdom and guidance as we discuss the items before us this evening. Grant us your pathway as it relates to our master plans and our budget, that we reflect on the needs of our city and our citizens. Continue to bless us in our journey. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item on the agenda is public comments. We do have one. Would you like to speak now or?
Just wait for that.
Okay. No problem. Okay, so moving on, regular agenda items. Agenda item 3.1, consider resolution number 2026-0811-01, setting the maximum property tax rate for year 2026-2027, establishing the date for the public hearing, and setting the dates for tax rate adoption. Okay. Do any of y'all have any questions about the tax rate? It's gonna be staying the same as last year. Which is a good thing. In my mind. Do any of y'all have issues with the dates that we provided to y'all?
Yes. Did I mention that? I was going to request the special call meeting on September the 8th, possibly be moved to the
Where's the
Thursday.
10th, because September 9th, on the Wednesday, there's an EDC meeting at 6:30. So,
There's an EDC meeting on it.
Right, the 10th is fine. I mean, do I need to make a motion and we vote, or just, are we just asking if it can be changed to the 10th?
Drew, do you have football or anything?
What, day is it?
It's a Thursday.
Oh, yeah, I'll probably have football. The 11th is.
Could we do it after the EDC meeting? Before?
When is the
after?
EDC meeting?
It's at 6:30 or something,
On what day?
on the Wednesday, the
On
9th.
the 9th.
What's wrong with the Tuesday, the 8th?
I'll be out of town.
Lord.
Okay,
It's the day after the holiday, and
gotcha.
We know, I don't know, normally their meetings don't run more than 30 minutes, so I don't, should be fine. We do it on the 9th at 7.
I'm fine with that if everyone else, I appreciate it. I mean, I could try to be here by 6, but 7, but not a lot, doesn't get here till 5:30.
We don't make it.
Yeah, I know we need to have that votes. So we said Wednesday
7, the September 9th at 7.
and they start at 6:30? Okay.
I'm going to push it to 7:30 again now.
It doesn't matter to me,
Whatever
whatever.
at 6.
The agenda's already posted.
Oh,
Yeah.
not for September.
Oh, sorry.
7:30, just in case.
See if that's an opportunity.
We could do 7:30 when we're just gonna be discussing the budget, but it shouldn't take all that long for us to,
Okay, so 7:30 on the 9th?
I think I'm good with that.
Thank you. I'm a way advanced planner, especially when it comes to trips, so,
Yeah, that's how my wife is.
and I just hope that nothing conflicts when it's time to get going.
No, you won't. You can't stay.
So do we need to do any more on 3.1?
Yes, we,
It says to consider it, I didn't see if it was possible action.
It would just be approving the resolution, setting the property tax rate.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve. Resolution 2026081101, setting the maximum property tax rate for tax year 26-27 to, where's my notes? 0.394004 cents per $100 valuation.
Second.
okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. No further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. It was unanimous. All right, agenda item 3.2, discussion, consideration, of possible action to approve the design and placement of the city logo on the new 1 million gallon elevated storage tank, including selection of either a single logo or a dual logo design and approval of any associated change order.
Go to
How you
Mayor,
doing?
Council. So as you know, we're constructing the elevated tower. I don't know if y'all driven by that way. You can actually see it now. It's actually, I think we're up to 6 flights now, so it's actually moving pretty well.
Nice.
So it has come to the staff's attention that whenever it was designed for the logo, the only thing that was put there was a J. And I feel like if we're the city, needs something a little better, at least says the city of Gerald. So as of right now, they're going to be able to still just put us in there for one with no cost. Is when we have a couple logos for y'all to look at right here. And I figure council will have a good time to actually pick what they want, kind of get a color. So at the very bottom one, it's the same blue that we have on the tower behind us. And you can't really tell, but the background is like a sand color, kind of like our tower here. So I don't know if we want to mirror something like that, or we can go with the other different colors, like a dark blue, and then, or the top one with the multiple colors to the line and whatnot. And then if we do two, they're gonna do like a best placement to where they can see it best from north side of 35 and south side of 35. So they'll give us like a best placement for it as well. And also it'll be very minimal cost. It's not gonna cost that much as long as whatever logo we do on one side, if you let you mirror it, it'll be very minimal cost.
Do you have an estimate on?
I don't exactly, they're still getting that to me, but, he said it's not gonna be very much at all. He said if we were changing logos, that'd be a different story, because they gotta get the schematics and everything on the drawing. But he said if it's just gonna be the same exact one, it ain't gonna be that much. And if it is, if we do stay with the one, it's gonna be perpendicular to 35. So it'd be basically facing straight toward 35 right there.
With the bottom one, did they say anything that would fade faster?
Not really, no, and it's the same one we have right here on the tower right now, and it's held up very well.
I like the blue.
Yeah, it matches the school's color, it's the same color as the school, and I'm assuming that's why it was done the previous time as well, so. And it would mirror this one as well, so it'd be blue and blue, nothing different, so.
We have to vote?
Yeah, that's, I don't think it was gonna come to y'all, but whenever staff brought this to me, I didn't know which one to pick, so I was like, let the council.
Thanks, Hagrid.
Well, I like that.
Three.
Everybody likes them.
I think it's representing the city really well. And our school district and everything else.
Select option 3.
Second.
Alright, so we have a motion and,
You got it.
Matter.
alright, we have a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Question. Does that motion just to pick it, or does that go on one side or two sides?
Oh, yeah, we do need to have this, either one side or dual.
And it's minimal cost, $100 or $1,000?
I don't have exactly that, but they were reassuring that it was not gonna be like a break the bank kind of a adjustment.
Can we come back once we know price? That would be better.
Can we select that one and at least let
Yeah, at least.
the builder know that
yeah.
that's the one we want and then bring us a price for the second side?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, at least I can get this to them so they can start getting it in their, and getting it drawn up on their computer system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. My vote is aye.
Alright, so unanimous. Alright, agenda item 3.3, discussion consideration of possible action regarding a request by Sensata Development for the Amy's Attic Self-Storage. Building permit number 2026-64, plan review and inspection fees to be reduced.
Mayor and council, so at the last meeting, last week, y'all asked staff to present what it costs for the third-party fees, and then what the city's invoicing, and then what those fees from Sensato Development were, and then we also did a survey for other cities in the area to give you an idea of what their fees are in comparison to ours. Most of the development fees, as far as like the permit actual costs go, most of them were much lower, but a lot of these towns also have mostly in-staff, or in-house, staff doing plan review and inspection services. So it's a little cheaper for them, whereas we're charging a little higher because we're offsetting those third-party costs. But you will see that most of the other towns, they have much higher, impact fees that they've adopted. The reason that this development is so low is because it was in a development agreement from the Balcones Flats development. So back in 2020, those prices were set whenever that development agreement was put in place. So they've been locked into those impact fees at that lower rate. What we prepared is looking at the column for the third-party fees. Ultimately, we don't have a lot of revenue coming in from the impact fees because they've been locked into a lower rate. And so that plan review fee from what we've invoiced is obviously a high cost that we're charging. It's also to offset the inspection fees because we basically just break even on that one. And then the site plan review is also based off of the acreage, and our ordinance actually says that we're supposed to charge $2,500, so there's a discrepancy in the actual permitting software, so we need to look into all of the fees as we go through the fee rate study and determine what our new fees are gonna be and make sure that everything is reflected into the actual permitting system itself. And then obviously the engineering inspections, those are basically all the same as what they proposed in there. So the biggest difference is gonna be on the plan review fee and then the inspection fees. So the total difference in the request from what they asked for is about $72,690. Staff and legal have talked about different options. The most appropriate way for them to get some kind of fee reduction would be through like a 380 agreement. So developing out and negotiating the terms of that agreement so that you can actually give them the rebate that they're requesting through like sales tax rebate or something like that. The other option that we kind of talked about and tossed around was the possibility of creating like a grant program through the EDC so that other developments that are bringing in economic impact, they can go and request funds from the EDC and basically sales tax, property tax rebate, but allowing them to prove what their economic impact is. So whether that's the amount of jobs that they're creating, the additional sales tax or property tax revenue that they're gonna be bringing into the city, and basically proving up what their overall impact is gonna be, and then letting the EDC make that, kind of grant proposal, to actually have a proper way to give fees and reduce costs. Do you have any other thoughts?
You did great.
Thanks. I don't know if they had public comments, so the developer has to.
Yeah, I introduced myself last week and spoke, but I thought we were trying to get, I thought the point this week was to relook the fees in general, because y'all mentioned y'all were looking to reduce them, so.
So we are, but that's something that we're gonna have to bring back later. So-
Oh, okay, I thought you were gonna have an idea on that fee this week and how it would apply to ours.
No.
That's not the case.
No.
We have to do a study, we have to take it through P and Z, then it comes to council.
Okay, that wasn't the impression I got last week, so, okay. So it's either a 380 agreement or to the EDC, either way, we're just kicking this down the road, and the hope is we'll probably just pay it and start construction, I assume.
I mean.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, basically, yes, I
Yeah.
mean, that's what it's gonna boil down to. I mean,
Okay, so there's no concession being presented tonight whatsoever, or is it still up for council to decide?
I mean, it's up for council to decide, I mean, they can make a different decision than what staff's recommending, but.
So are those actual fees in column on the third-party fees?
Yeah, the third party fees is our actual cost.
So the plan review fee was 7,825, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And that's much higher because of the fact that it's the 50,000 square feet. So when you look at the fees and on the fees on the rate table, that one has the 50 cents per every 10,000 square feet
Right.
over 50,000. So it's astronomically higher than what if it was under the 50,000. I mean, it would just be
Right,
like
right.
$1,500.
So the actual cost the city paid was 7,800, but we're being invoiced for 63,000.
Yes.
That's the biggest, I mean,
Yeah, that's the biggest one. That's
if we were gonna make a concession tonight, I think we could go with what the city actually paid and not 62,000, would be my hope. I think that's what we were pushing back on the most. And we've asked for that. We will pay whatever the third party company, charge, but substantially lower than the 63,000. It's a $55,000 difference between what we're being asked to pay and what was actually incurred. I don't know where that money goes, but, I would ask that we have a concession maybe on that, if that's possible. We want to get started as soon as possible, but we may push things out.
There is a cost when they start this.
I don't know what else to discuss.
Anybody else have any questions for him? No, Brent?
I mean, I've voiced my concern about having an agreement with you. But then I also understand where we're coming from on that, and the plan review fee is pretty egregious compared to our cost, and, I mean, the staff did offer two great, opportunities to help get that reduced. I don't know.
Well, that you talked about reviewing our current fees, what does that timeline look like so that you would see a reflection of potential change?
The hope is that we can get it brought in October. So P and Z in September, and then October bring it to y'all.
2 more months.
Well, I'll have to, not my call, but I could definitely find out.
Because there could be prior agreements that were subject to these current rates, and that has the potential to open doors if we can make a change, is that correct?
Well, I mean, they've been vested under the current rate, so I mean, if we make a change to the rates in October, I mean, they still technically are subject to these rates that are currently in place.
Right, but we would have more, I mean, if we do lower them, we could grant a one-time.
If you do that, you open the door for anybody else that was under.
Well,
those
absolutely.
fees. And so what they're saying is, if you go to EDC based off of what they're offering the community and jobs and whatnot, then they may be able to offset some of that if they want to give them a rebate there.
Have you thought about asking the EDC?
I haven't, we try to
Or
avoid it, but, we can't. The 380 agreement, that more time, I don't know what the time was, I don't know, but.
Quicker than October.
We're in October? So would the city be willing to look at that?
We are directed to do so by council.
Oh, okay.
If staff suggested it and that was an option, you know, I would be in agreement of getting one drawn up for him to look at it.
Do we have a dollar amount? Do we need some sort of basis on amount to negotiate a 380 agreement?
Is that all the costs and the city's third-party fees from the permit? That's all of them? So what we were proposing to pay is actually $18,000 higher than what?
Right, but that, we do have city staff that we have,
Right.
that we have to pay. There's costs associated
The
that
city,
need to be
the
higher
city
than
needs to
what.
make money,
that's-
we're
can't
not here
invoice a
to
third party.
break
Right.
even, we're not
That's
here
also
to
not
break even as a
including
city.
like the LUVs in that calculation, that 38,000,
Oh, that doesn't have the LUs in it?
No.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, okay.
that's not including your LUVs. That's just,
What is it with the LUs, just curious? Probably
Do you have a projection? Will there be?
58,377.
58 through
I do have
77,
a
so.
legal question. Do you see this very often in other cities? This negotiating for rates and stuff?
No, I mean, usually council sets the rates and.
That's what I
Is
thought
what it is.
as well.
From my knowledge here, when y'all started this project, did y'all know what the rates were?
Well, we
Let me
didn't.
be honest
No,
with
I
you.
didn't. I built 50 or 60 projects across the state of Texas, mainly in smaller towns, I mean, Longview, Amarillo, some bigger towns, but not Austin or Dallas. I've never stood before a city council, to your point, asking for a reduction. Just caught me off guard.
Okay.
Should have checked.
And of course, they have a development agreement in place, is that right?
So they do not,
Oh,
but the land developer that originally did the whole development does. They're purchasing a piece of property from that other land.
when was the original development agreement?
2020, and then it was amended in 2026 for the
Fourth one, yeah.
Yeah, those would have been good opportunities to negotiate something like
Yeah.
this, but is what it is.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So what does staff need from
No,
us to?
no. Right.
You could direct staff to negotiate a 380 agreement with the developer, and you could, appoint one of you to, assist staff in negotiating that agreement.
So that 380 would be based on sales tax?
That,
Based on,
we could set benchmarks, I mean, jobs, sales tax generated, you know, things that are typically included in a 380.
When we discussed that at the last meeting, you really weren't gonna have a lot of job opportunity and.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably three or four,
Right,
it's not a ton.
yeah,
It'd be more on the tax rolls than anything, probably is probably the biggest impact.
right. And I don't know if it would be worth it for Katie either.
I mean, 380s are pretty flexible, we can find some kind of appropriate benchmark that will fit.
I think there's a pretty good starting point up there with work that's been done anyways.
I guess that's a starting point if it's faster than 2 months. I mean, all that we can do is not negotiate it. I mean,
Right.
just it's presented and we see if we get somewhere. And if not, then the next step, it appears that it'll probably go to the 2 month. But at least it's a start.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So you need to make a motion on that one?
Yeah, you can. But like I said, if there's a ballpark on the number that y'all would like to see it go down, or y'all can just leave it up to staff to try and negotiate that. Or like I said, direct someone on the council to be kind of part of those negotiations.
Yeah, I'd like someone that's knowledgeable with all the numbers to, I don't wanna just throw out a ballpark, because I mean, that wouldn't be right.
That's true.
I'd like, we can at least get it started, and then we can talk about actual numbers and margins and everything, and then just,
Would that be brought back here for final approval?
Now I'm gonna make a motion to direct our staff to negotiate the 380 agreement with the developer. And do we have anybody that wants to volunteer to assist staff?
I'll do it.
So I'll add them to have Lori Allen assist staff in the negotiations.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor in a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Unanimous, or, sorry, not unanimous, 4-1. It's typically unanimous. All right, agenda item 3.4, presentation, discussion, and possible direction regarding the draft water master plan. Hi.
Good evening, council. I'm Sam Blumenthal. I'm an associate with the consulting firm KPA Engineers. Been asked to come and speak on the water and wastewater master plans. We'll take those one at a time. Do you want me to?
I was gonna let you, but I don't know where.
It's right there on the desk,
I think that's
the table.
It's just the bottom.
No, on Diane's table.
It's a recorder.
Oh, sorry. Let's see, did you leave it over here? You had it?
You want me to run the mouse? Is that?
Yeah, you just had a mouse.
Alright, got all the power now. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna start with the water master plan. I thought I'd introduce the topic of water in Gerald with just a look at the growth that Gerald's seen in the past 5 years. So we've got a few statistics up there. In 2021, the city had 872 connections. At the end of last year, it had 2,164 connections on its system. So in the past 5 years, the city has seen on its water system a substantial amount of growth, 250% in water users. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone about growth is occurring in this area, but in quantified terms, it's a little over twice as much in a 5-year time span. Similarly, the annual water demand has been trending upwards over the past 5 years. It's grown by 220%. It's not a one-for-one, but it's doubled plus a little bit. In 2021, the city used about 108 million gallons of water. And by the time we got to the end of 2025, the city had used 240 million gallons of water in that year. So the question is, how do we plan for the future of the Gerald water system? And in my mind, that would bring a lot of questions. How much water do we have? Where does it come from? What's its quality? How much do we use? How much water is entitled to development? How much is going to wholesale? How fast is the demand increasing? When do we need more water? Where might future water come from? And then of course, if we have water, how do we get it to customers? What projects do we need? And so that's really the purpose of the water master plan, is to answer all the previous questions and some others, and to create a systematic approach to moving forward with the infrastructure, to create a plan that goes from point A, 2025, to point B, which is 2050. A lot of what we're going to talk about is supply and demand. Those are the ends of the spectrum. Of course, we need to get the water from supply to the demand, so there are other elements we'll talk about, but a majority of what we'll speak on today is the first and the last items. I think it's important to frame how water demand acts in a system and what the system's goal is. It's important to know that no two customers use the same amount of water. A typical residential customer versus the car wash are going to use different amounts of water. Likewise, over a given year, there's going to be more demand in summer, less in the winter. And the reason I bring this up is because it's the goal of the water system to safely provide drinking water every day of the year. So what we have to watch out for when we're planning for a water system is what is that most challenging day of the year, and how do we provide resources to accommodate the demand on that most challenging day. And for terminology's sake, the most challenging day of the year in a water system is called the max day. So this comes back to our earlier question, how much water does Gerald use? We talked about the increased annual demand has been substantial over the past 5 years, 220%. The past 5 years, max day demand has increased about 160%. Those are not one for one. Likelihood is that there have been system improvements and changes in system management over the past 5 years that may have led to that. It's just something that needs to be monitored as we go forward. Any projection that you make with these plans is subject to change. So the plan is conservative, but it's something to look at and say, okay, is our demand per user also trending in direction? This is what the water demand looks like over the past 7 years, I guess, on this chart. Each blue dot is representing how much water Gerald used in a single day from 2019 to 2026. You'll notice there's a sinusoidal wave-like pattern that occurs every year, with the peak amounts of water use being in the summer months and the tail ends of the years being less than that. And you can see we've denoted in each year with a red circle what the most demanding day of the year is. And again, that's the reason we show this, is just to give you guys an idea of what we're planning for in the system and what we need to be accommodating. It's not accommodating a day in March, it's accommodating 365 days a year, which includes that most challenging day. I don't want to linger on this too much because there's a lot to talk about, but just know that when we talk about modeling in water systems, and Gerald specifically, we've taken utility billing data and we spread that across and created a demand distribution model. All that is to say is that when we run models and simulations of the city system, when questions are asked from staff of, what about this development here, because we've done a number of feasibility studies for the city, it's in the context of true demand. We have it mapped out so we know who's the high user, who's the less consumptive user. Typically, most of your meters on average are about 400 gallons a day. The top 5 users are averaging about 8,000 gallons a day, and those are businesses and people with larger meters. But that's just to show you the disparity. The takeaway from that is to say, okay, not everyone is the same, and we have a way of accounting for that in the system. The next question I would be asking if I was seeking answers about my city's water system would be, okay, that's what we've been using. How much are we obligated going forward? There are 2 buckets that your obligations have gone into. One bucket is wholesale. Your wholesale customer is Gerald Schwartner across the street. You have an agreement with them, last updated in April of 2022, and they're allowed to take up to 1.5 million gallons in a day. The second bucket that has city obligation is entitlements to developers, which is probably what more comes to mind when we think about water use going forward. These are agreements to serve people as well as developments that are still building out. As of May 11th, 2026, there was 5,888 LUEs of water still obligated to developers. In total, the city has about 7,000 LUEs outstanding of water demand. Currently, you serve about 2,200, and at the completion of these, you'll be serving about 9,200, so about 4 times the current size. What's important here to understand, though, is that the developments are not built overnight. I mean, that makes sense, but it's worth noting here that timing is very important. The development is constructed over time. The question I would ask is, how much time, how fast is development occurring? To do that, we can look back at how fast development has been occurring. So this is a chart of the connections over the past 7 years in the Gerald system. The colorful lines add up to the black line, and really just we can look at the top line there. That's showing the total number of connections that the city is serving at this time, which is increased by 250% over the past 5 years, from 713 to 2,164 connections. Well, the takeaway from here is quantifiably, there's a lot of growth in Gerald, and we're to expect about 290 connections being added to the system annually. Some of the years you can see are more, 2024 is a great example, nearly 700 connections were added to the system that year. On average, it's about 290. So that's all the demand stuff. That's what we need to be looking forward to satisfy with the master plan. Where does our water currently come from? We have groundwater and we have purchased water. Groundwater comes from the well that's just behind City Hall here, and it pumps over and up into the water tower. It's an Edwards Aquifer well. The city also has a contract with Lone Star Regional Water, as you all know, and that supplies water from Lake Granger. So the Brazos River Authority manages Lake Granger. Lone Star takes that water, pumps it from Lake Granger all the way up to Gerald and a few other customers, including Sonterra, Gerald Schwartner, CLL Mud, which is Jim Schwetner, and then the city of Gerald. Right now, the city of Gerald can access up to 1.5 million gallons of that. When the ARPA projects are completed, you'll be able to access your total amount of 2.3. So that's a lot of information, and I would like to boil it down to some simple questions in my mind. So what is the current status, knowing what our demand is and what our supply is? Where does that leave us? So I have 2 questions up here. One is, how much water does the city have remaining today? And 2, when must the city increase supply to pace with growth? City currently has 2.8 million gallons of water on hand. As noted, one amount is from your well, the other is from the Lone Star Regional Water Authority. That can support up to about 3,700 connections to the system. You have about 2,100 connections existing, which consume about 1.8 million gallons. It's just arithmetic after that. 2.8 minus 1.8, you've got 1 million gallons of water remaining today. If we want to know when we want to expand or when we need to make the next step to get more supply to meet demand, we need to project forward. So we forecasted water demands going into the future. I'm not going to get to all those projections. You can see the growth rates on the far right side. And of course, always happy to answer questions, but just to keep us moving through this, it's a combination of historic growth trends. It's a combination of Texas Demographic Center projection by county, and of course, conversations with staff. The result is down there at the end. The answer is the city must increase its supply 2030, 2032. So about 5 or 6 years, the city needs to have done something to keep up with the growing demand. I like illustrations, so here you can see what that looks like graphically. The black circles in the bottom left corner are your previous max days. The 2 red lines are showing projections going from 2025 to 2050, which if you recall is our planning horizon for this planning document. The black line that's dashed and bold is showing us what our supply is. You'll notice at the end of 2026, we're increasing our supply to 2.88 million gallons with the completion of the ARP projects. And that carries us through to 2030 in a conservative estimate, or 2032 at a less conservative estimate. It's worth making a disclaimer about projections. They are projections. It's not a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what's gonna happen in 5 years from now. So I just I'll read verbatim. Therefore, important for the city to regularly review the recommendations of this master plan in the context of our development. That's all to say, you know, keep an eye on it. This is what we're planning today needs to be our goal and what we need to be doing. But we always need to be watching what's actually happening and adjusting as time goes on. So back to our questions, how much water does the city have remaining? You have 1 million gallons a day available extra right now. That means your current supply utilization is about 65% in use that's been expected to be used, you know, whatever the next day is this year, August 15th or 18th, whatever it happens to be. Question number 2, when was the city increase supply to pace with growth? I noted here, complete ARPA projects, that's a given and a must, it's an in-progress thing, the city's committed to it. I'm just highlighting here again, it's the expectation that that's completed at the end of 2026, which corresponds with when those funds. The next part of that is the city needs to secure additional water in the 2030-2032 timeframe. So again, 5 or 6 years, there needs to be something added to the city if we continue to see the growth that we're seeing. So I think a reasonable question is, where do we get more water? But I want to frame that by saying that no city has unlimited water. Cities and growth regions must continue to pursue water sources. I've noted here to encourage Gerald to remain vigilant, creative, and connected with what's going on around you. I've listed a number of things there that outside of this or later I'm more than happy to talk about. The most important one, I shouldn't say most important, but the most relevant one would be the Williamson County Regional Water Planning Study. This is something the county has set aside, I think, $500,000 to perform a study to find out how can we work together as a county to supply water to the county as a whole. So I'd recommend just, you know, insert yourself in those conversations where appropriate and make sure to be ready if, you know, you're asked questions about, you know, how much water does Gerald need? When do you need it? To be involved in those conversations so that you could perhaps be participating in a regional water project to benefit the city. November 2025, the planning efforts received some council direction. That evening, city declined groundwater deal with an adjacent entity. After declining that deal, the request was made for planning to focus on city-owned well fields, so that's the direction this master plan has taken. Of course, everyone hopes for the regional water plan to work out, but what does Gerald need to do in its control and its power? What can we be doing now outside of a regional solution? So if we're talking about groundwater, there are 2 sources for that. That could be either the Edwards Aquifer, Lower Trinity. One is lower production, higher quality. Lower Trinity is higher production, lower quality. It's important to note that there's no groundwater district in Williamson County, which is a double-edged sword for the city. One that allows you to access water without as much regulation, but it also limits the amount of protection you would have from an entity regulating what's going on from a groundwater perspective in Williamson County. So we talked about the water sources. The next question would be how to address the quality of the groundwater. The surface water that's delivered to you from Lake Ranger has been treated of excellent quality. Pumping water out of the ground from the Lower Trinity Aquifer, which is where you will likely be getting your water, has a few constituents that are not within the state standards. So the question is, what do we do about that? Possible solutions, number 1 is a treatment plant to treat the water. It would be an ultrafiltration or RO plant. Essentially, this is a very big ticket item, easily be $40 million to create a plant like that to treat water. The other side of that coin is once you treated the water, you end up with a byproduct of a highly saline solution that you have to do something with. The second option which is the direction of this master plan, would be blending as your method of correcting the quality issues of the groundwater. Essentially, it is as it sounds. You take high quality water from Lake Ranger, you put it in a tank with lesser quality groundwater, they mix, out goes medium quality water that meets state guidelines. What limits you on blending is the amount of surface water you have. So at some point, you won't have enough surface water to offset the constituents in the groundwater. There's minimal additional cost for that. It's not really worth talking about. It will be in ground storage tanks that you already have for other reasons. It's not necessarily an additional cost. It's just limited on time and surface water availability. And I guess I already touched on this, but can we do it? Yes, you can do it for a time. We can get, by preliminary calculations, about 4 million gallons from the Lower Trinity Aquifer this way. Mix it with 2 million gallons of surface water. There's some issues with fluoride, but there are ways you can work with TCEQ on that they have protocols for such things. So, all that talk about what we're doing, this is the solution graphic. We're looking at our red line projections from earlier, but now we're seeing a regular stair-step pattern of improvements the city can make to stay ahead of that growth. So we'll see P1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are all projects the city is recommended to engage in to stay ahead of that growth that is coming to Gerald. The 25-year planning horizon coincides with the amount of groundwater we can blend. So within our planning horizon, there's no need, as we can tell from preliminary calculations, there's no need for the $40 million water treatment plant. The city should be able to drill Lower Trinity wells, blend it with their water from Lake Ranger, and send it out to the system. Again, every well is a mystery till you dig it, so we have to rely on other wells in the area, which we've done. There's analysis in the report about that, but it looks favorable. There's a method going forward to avoid or at least offset the need for that plant for post-2050. After 2050, it is highly likely that the city will be investing in a expensive water treatment plant to keep up with demand should the city continue to grow at that time. Okay, we've covered supply, we've covered demand. I'm going to run through these middle items here. How do we get the supply we talked about to the customers? This is proof of when we need our next ground storage. 2034, that would be down at the Lenta Argo pump station. I'll give a summary at the end of these. This talks about how we're going to get water to our 2 locations. Essentially, this is what we've been talking about. We're going to propose some wells in the area around the ARPA pump station. We're going to collect them at the ARPA pump station, mix them in the ground storage, and then send the blended water to town. The only issue is we need to send 6 million gallons to town. The ARPA transmission system is good for 4 million gallons. That's not an issue for tomorrow. That's an issue we're predicting in 15 years or so. But it's, this is a 25-year planning document. It's worth mentioning that that's going to be an item coming up. Red line on this map is showing the ARPA transmission line. The solution to increasing capacity is just adding another path to town from your ARPA transmission. So you can see the pumps down there in the red and green Christmas colors. They're sending water to town. We're saying we're going to parallel some form of transmission. It could be on County Road 311, maybe Ronald Reagan. The reason it's talked about now and talked about early is that we can plan for it financially. We know what's coming in 2035, 2040, and that the city could secure easements far in advance with the county as, they're going out to do Reagan. The city of Gerald can raise its hand and say, well, we'd like to be part of that easement acquisition process. This time about elevated storage tank. The next one, P1 is the one that's currently being built that Stephen presented on earlier. P2 would be your next elevated storage tank, and that's looking like 2038. So the master plan has loads of extra information in there. It comes with a map at the back, like this, that color codes the projects and provides numbers and identifiers that say, let's complete this project in the next 5 years, let's complete this project in the next 10 years. So red is 5, blue is 10, green is beyond that. All the projects are identified and tagged, so there are cost estimates at the back so you can get an idea of, okay, how much are these gonna cost and at what time do we need to do them? The 5-year project list prioritizes finishing the ARPA projects, those are in progress, finishing the elevated storage tank, that is in progress. The item that is proposed that is not currently ongoing or funded by another source would be getting a well online and connected to FM 1105, the ARPA blended pump station in Proctortown. I'll just run through the years. These are the key projects for each of the planning periods, and I've listed them out by years. So these are kind of the stepping stones, the milestones that are recommended the city to complete to manage their water system effectively with the growth that's occurring. 2026, complete the ARPA projects. 27, complete the elevated tank. Those two are already ongoing. 28 lists acquired town plant. That was of interest to the city when we were creating this document. So it's in there as an optional item, and there's a cost associated with it, but certainly it is not as critical as the next one, 2030 would be. Let's get a well somewhere down on FM 1105 and connect it. 2032, rehabbed a well here in town that you already own that is currently out of commission but could be brought back online. 2032 would also be the time to add additional ground storage down to the Valenta pump station. 2035 would be time for another well, so this would be your second well project down on FM 1105. And then 2035 would also be the time to be considering that second transmission line that comes to town, either on Ronald Reagan or perhaps County Road 311. Those are the 2035, 2030, I'm not gonna list them, but that essentially gives a roadmap going forward. Okay, here's perhaps the challenges that the city is facing, and I would say yes, there is substantial growth that is occurring. We've seen it over the past 5 years. We can quantify that, but I hope the other takeaway is that there are paths forward, and there are certainly many opportunities to meet the growth needs in this area. That's all I have on the water master plan. I can entertain questions. I can move on to the next one. Up to y'all. Yes.
In the blending, we're taking high quality water, low quality water, making medium quality. What is the definition of medium quality? What are we talking about?
That's probably just being imprecise with speech. The goal for several of the constituencies was, for instance, TDS is one of them that is an issue with lower trendy wells. The state sets secondary standards, and it says the secondary standard is 1,000 parts per million. Our goal in this, I think, was 950 or something, bring it up to that edge.
Parts of what? What's the?
Grams per liter, if that
I
helps.
mean, what is the contaminant they were dealing with? Is it the fluoride?
Oh, I see. Sulfates, fluoride, and TDS are the three that are issues in the lower trendy aquifer. They are all, if it is nice to know, they're all secondary standards, so they pose no risk to health. The EPA and TCEQ list them as aesthetic issues. So the state wants water to hit an aesthetic quality. High TDS water just tastes salty, brackish. It's not a health hazard. Fluoride, if it goes above 4 parts per million, does become a health hazard, but that's not an issue. That'll be marked down. That would be the only one that kind of sets its foot in both. Sulfates and TDS are not health hazards. And of course, you can do bench testing and blending studies, which is, an easy recommendation to take samples of both water, mix them together, set them on a shelf for 5 days, and then they take another test of how they reacted. Which is typical before you combine water of 2 different sources.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I'd also just mention that, there are provisions where you can petition the state. You know, if you're at like 1,200 PDS, the limit's 1,000. Since it is a secondary standard, you can write DCQ. I would not hang your hat on anything, but you can write them and say, hey, we would like a variance, for lack of better words, on this. And when you do that, you just have to prove that there's an economic constriction that doesn't allow you to get that from 1,200 to 1,000. In your case, you would have to make the argument, we, can't afford the $40 million plant right now. Please let us use the 1,200 TDS. So that's another option. I wouldn't hang your hat on it. I would just say it is very likely we can blend water from 2025 to 2050.
Okay.
And then beyond that, yeah, something to certainly consider.
That's what we're looking at.
What about our kids?
It's funny to present these plans and think about, what am I gonna be doing in 2040? Maybe building a water tower, who knows, but yeah. There's certainly long-range planning documents, but good for cities to be looking at.
Any other questions?
Okay. Well, you need to introduce the,
I'm just here to pull it up.
okay, yeah.
Moving on to agenda item 5. Discuss the wastewater master plan.
I'll do my best to move quickly. I know these are detailed presentations. I got it. Thanks. Thanks, Boris. So again, I'm gonna introduce the wastewater much the same way I did the water side. Substantial growth in Gerald, no surprise there. You'll see the number of connections are different. I'm just gonna make sure we are all on the same page to start with. Where the Gerald water system is, it's west of I-35. The Gerald wastewater system is on both sides of I-35. So they're different service areas. And that's what I see in 2021, there was 5,000 connections. In 2025, there's nearly 10,000. But it's a similar story to the water. Water grew by 250% over 5 years. Wastewater grew by 215% over 5 years. So, appears of similar relative magnitude. In 2021, the treatment plant down in Downhill Creek was accepting about 600,000 gallons of wastewater a day. 2025, at the end of the year, it was accepting about 1.1 million gallons. So again, quite a bit of an increase. So the question is, again, how do we plan for the Gerald wastewater system? Lots of questions. Treatment, how much do we have? Development, when's it coming? Do we have system limitations that will prevent us getting customer wastewater down to the plant? And so we're gonna look at all those things. It's worth noting, the wastewater system is gravity fed, which means it's cumulative. And I think it's worth to frame the understanding that it acts like a watershed. You have lots of little streams coming together into central pipes that then grow in diameter as they head downstream. So as you think about the wastewater system, think about it as just a watershed. We're collecting streams into bigger and bigger rivers as we get down to the plant. What's important about mentioning this is that for wastewater systems, we size for ultimate expectations. What we don't want to do is put a pipe in the ground, put another pipe in the ground that's a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger, all the way down, and then add a customer at the top and have to rebuild the whole thing because it's cumulative. What that customer does is being carried throughout the whole system. So when you have a planning document like this, one of the goals of economic benefits is that we're getting the right size the first time for the ultimate build out. To define the right size and the ultimate build out is to define all those watersheds that drain to these different pipes. And then overall, what area are we trying to study when we talk about wastewater? How far are we allowing ourselves to expect build out to occur? The study area does not mandate service, it's not a CCN, this is just a planning document. It will differ from the water master plan study area, like we talked about, the water is just on this side of town for Gerald, wastewater is on both sides. And I think it's important to note, it describes an area that the city will grow into. Currently, you serve about 25% of this study area we're about to look at. So it's a big study area, you currently serve about 25%. We're expecting the city to grow out into the remaining 75% of that area. And again, it's something that's grown into over a long time. If we just assume something like 2% growth after 2050, you know, it's at least 100 years until this service area is maximized. When we set the study area, what we're trying to include is the city's limits. Y'all serve CCN and ETJ. We want to make sure we're able to serve those three areas, and we have a plan in place for how to serve those areas. We also want to include the water service area. We want to include areas draining to existing infrastructure. If we have something there, let's go ahead and continue to use it and make sure we're accounting for the areas going to it. We want to include areas of active growth or imminent growth. And of course, we want to include areas of high commercial value, so I-35 and Ronald Reagan are in there. We're not including Georgetown ETJ, so we're going to plan all the way down to where we meet Georgetown ETJ, and after that, we're not planning. This is what it looks like on a map. The black thick line is showing the area that we're considering as our planning area. The purple shaded zone is your CCN, which extends far down 35. I've got Santerre shown up there as they are one of your customers. And then of course the green line is showing your ETJ, which we are making sure we capture within the black line. The system can be broken up into 4 pieces. If I was to look at the Gerald system, that's how I compartmentalize it. We have our wastewater plant. We have an area that receives direct gravity flow. We have Santerre mud as its own area that flows into our system and then down to the plant. And then of course, we have everything west of I-35 is on lift stations. Everything west of I-35, 90% of everything west of I-35 has to go to a pump and then be pumped back over and down to the Donovo plant. So I'm just gonna go through, and this presentation is going to break up each of those. This is y'all's existing treatment plant there on the right. We took some drone video photos around town. There are 2 parts of any wastewater facility. One is the discharge permit, and then 2 is the facility itself. Y'all's current permit is for 2 million gallons, and it has a maximum of 4 million gallons. Currently, your facility has a hydraulic capacity of 2 million gallons. Through our calculations and looking at data, we assess the treatment facilities to actually be closer to 1.75 million gallons. And this is an issue of wastewater strength exceeding the design. So the plant was designed for 1 strength of wastewater coming to it, and in reality, the strength of wastewater coming to it is higher, which limits the amount of capacity of the plant. So unfortunately, it may be a 2 MGD plant, but it's likely to have issues when you get to 1.75 million gallons. This is what flow looks like to the plant over time. Kind of like the supply charts on the other one. The black horizontal lines are showing your capacity of the plant, and then all those red circles are monthly averages to the plant. Everything is beneath the capacity. Currently, you're, you know, what is that, 60% of the plant when you look at the last few red dots compared to the last black line. Again, your plant capacity is about 1.75, and you're averaging about 1.2 million gallons to the plant. So it should look familiar. It's a similar discussion we had on the water side. How much wastewater service has been obligated to folks? Again, we've got 2 buckets. We've got wholesale service and we've got entitlements to developers. The first wholesale service I'm going to tackle is to CLL Mud. In 2006, the city offered 5,000 LUEs to CLL Mud, which is Jim Schwetner, for the property for the wastewater plant. The other wholesale entity, of course, is Santerre Mud, which the agreement between the city and Sonterra is that Sonterra can send 3 million gallons of wastewater to city pipes and out to the plant. The payment to the city, I'm sure you're all very familiar with, is based on winter averaging calculations. It used to be metered at the connection points, but at some point, and one of the amendments that was removed. I think it's important to know that the area which they can generate flow and send it to your system is fixed in the contracts. There's a fixed service area for where they can have houses that connect to the system. And then there's also fixed points of entry into the Gerald system. And so there's been a series of amendments. The original was signed in 2008. Amendment 5, the most recent was signed in 2021. And each of those amendments has been to add more service area that they can build in and then send flow, or add a new point that they connect to your system. It's also worth mentioning there's a difference between contractual limitations and practical limitations. I've stated many of the contractual limitations there, the chief among them being 3 million gallons of wastewater they can send to y'all. But they are limited by how much water they have. They can only produce wastewater if they have water. And they're nearing the end of their water supply, from what I understand. At least they are of what they've allocated. And saying that they are not near their 3 million gallons sending to the city. I don't have it up here, but it's, it's 600, 700,000 gallons a day, which is much less than 3 million gallons a day. The third bucket is entitlements to developers. These are agreements to serve for folks that are already in construction. Currently, as of May 2026, there are about 6,000 LUEs outstanding that can develop and connect to the wastewater system. So again, the question is, development takes time. How fast is the wastewater system growing? Again, the colorful lines are components of the black line, so we can just look at the black line for time's sake. This is your growth in connections over the past 7 years. In the past 5 years, the wastewater system has grown by 1,000 connections a year on average. And it's fairly evenly split. Sonterra, Coolwater, their combined average annual growth is very similar to the City of Gerald's average annual growth, 450 for Sonterra, 470 for direct Gerald customers. Okay, so these look like familiar questions from our last presentation. How much treatment capacity remains today, and when must treatment capacity increase the pace of growth? We have 1.75, and that can treat about 13,000 LUEs. There lists the LUEs that are existing, which amount to about 1.28. In some, we've got about 500,000 gallons left. The plant's at about 73% capacity. If we want to know when we need to expand the plant, we got to look forward. So we got to forecast where demand is going, or where flow is going. The result is down there below. It's worth mentioning that the state requires expansion at particular moments of a plant's life. It's called the 75-90 rule. When the plant hits 75% capacity, you've got to start planning. The city's already doing that. You all have a designer under contract who's designing. Flows exceed 90%, the city is required to start construction. That's state mandated. If you hit the 90% for 3 consecutive months, you are required to start expanding the plant. 2026 is when we expect to hit that 75% rule, which is to begin planning. As you recall from the previous slide, we're at 73%. 75% is expected to occur this year. If we continue to grow at 1,000 connections a year, we're expecting 90% to occur in 2028. And then the flow would exceed capacity in 2030. Here's a graphical representation of that. Red line's your projection, black line is your capacity. You can see all the dots of your historic flows to the plant. You can see a pretty consistent growing trend there in the gray dots leading up to the projection. And you see I'm pointing out there, 90% design capacity is expected to be reached in 2028. Again, I have to disclaim every time I bring up projections, it's not a crystal ball, it's something to be monitored. This is a planning document. We should have expectations of what we're recommending in the planning document, but it's something that we'll continually need to be looking at to see how the growth is actually occurring. How much capacity remains today? About 3,500 LUEs. The plant's currently at 73% capacity. When must treatment capacity increase? Y'all already started planning for it, so you've passed that first milestone. This is recommending that the planning be completed in 2027 so that if the city is to hit as expected the 90% threshold in 2028 sometime, that those plans are in place and can move forward with construction in accordance with state regulations. And then in 2030, the idea would be to have completed the expansion. It's likely to be a 2-year project. So the long-term treatment strategy, try to go through these a little quicker. 2030 would be, like we said, when you want to finish that expansion to stay ahead of this growth. The next time you would reach a milestone would be at least by 2044. The master plan is recommending that you select a new basin to position a new wastewater plant at that time in 2044. At the current location, you'll have hit your permit maximum. You can, of course, go back and negotiate with the state and make your request for a higher permit at your current plant. The idea of constructing a second plant is to provide greater access to treatment. Because like I mentioned, you know, if you're not within that yellow area, you're having to pump to get over to the Donahoe plant. So if you strategically position another plant in your system, you're short-circuiting that distance that new development has to get back to the plant. And then in 2062, if you care to look out that far, would be the time to expand either your first plant, Donahoe, your second plant that's in a new basin, or you could construct a third plant. This is what the strategy would look like long-term. Again, red line is showing us the projection for the next 25 years, and we're looking at where does that red line intersect or get near some of our other lines. So 2028 is where we hit the 90% capacity for the first plant, and then our next milestone is 2042 is whenever the 90% will be hit down the road. Where you put the plant has some variation. The master plan affords levity in where you position that plant. For plant number 2, it could be on Willis Creek. That would need to be in coordination, or would likely be in coordination with Sonterra and the Willis Creek trunk, which is what they've been talking about trying to build from, you know, near Walmart down to one of their lift stations, then further down to the Martinka tract. Alternatively, the city could position a wastewater plant 1 basin over on Possum Creek, which would be near beyond that community down there. You could position a plant as well, another fair option. When you get to your third wastewater plant, you could have it on Slato Creek. Of course, I've listed the benefits and pros and cons there. Of course, public opinion of plant on Slato Creek is not high at the moment. And of course, there's numerous environmental challenges, because that's a very sensitive area to discharge. It's not impossible. You would just have some pretty strict limits on essentially how high-tech your plant would need to be to get it to a quality that's allowable to discharge in such a sensitive creek. This is what your planning area would look like broken up. So essentially, orange is the Donahoe wastewater plant. That should look pretty similar to your existing service area. The left side of the highway has been hatched to show the option for a Salato Creek plant. If the city, 20 years from now, decides they want to have a plant on Salado Creek, that hatched area would flow to Salado Creek. If it's environmentally challenging or the city doesn't want to have a Salado Creek plant, that hatched area would flow to a central location, and then there'd be a very large lift station. You get rid of all the small ones, put it in one big lift station, and send it back over to the orange area east of I-35. The master plan, I mean, that's 20 years out. Master plan is gonna give options for both of those. The time to make a city stance on where you're going with that is probably not for another 10 years. But it's incorporated into this document so we can making appropriate decisions now that leave the doors open for these kind of decisions. We don't want to paint ourselves in the corner. Okay, so that's all wastewater stuff, or wastewater treatment questions and answers. The yellow area is what drains the dual interceptors right now. This should be good news, especially in light of what we just had to talk about. The dual interceptors that collect all the wastewater in general have no immediate capacity concerns. They're sized appropriately to collect ultimate wastewater flow in that basin. So city's honestly in a really good spot for that whole trunk system. Y'all had one line for a number of years, maybe 2 decades. And then in 2023, y'all know you just finished the second line that parallels it. And so there's ample capacity. The trick is getting wastewater from the green area to the yellow area. Once it's in the yellow area, you're home free until you have to get to your plant. But to get wastewater out of the green area, we have to discuss the lift stations on the west side of I-35. Currently, about 43% of Gerald customers have to go through a lift station at some point. This requires the city to rely on 9 lift stations. The long-term goal is to, ideally, a city could have no lift stations, although that never actually happens, but ideally it's to reduce and consolidate these lift stations. The benefits there for the city are to remove restrictions based on mechanical means. You eliminate O&M costs. There's always issues at lift stations, mechanically speaking. And again, you get greater reliability with gravity conduit, and it's much more economical to let gravity do the work for you than be pumping it back over the hill. So you'll see there are 3 lift stations on the right side there that garnered notice in the master plan. Green circles are depicting lift stations that are in good standing, things that we're not overly concerned about or posed any flags in the master plan. The red circled ones are, of course, lift stations that need attention. Again, master plan is a long-term document. It's not saying it needs attention tomorrow, but these are things that we need to have on our horizon. The Balcones lift station is currently at 56% capacity. It's expected to do fine for 10 to 15 years. The first solution beyond 10 years is to increase the impeller size. All that is to say is make some minor pump modifications, and you can continue on another 5 years. The 15-year solution is a bit more steep. That requires relief or redirection of other lift stations coming to it. And then, of course, the ultimate solution, like I mentioned, is to eliminate it and just let it flow on downhill towards Salado Creek, either to a regional lift station that pumps back over or to a plant down there. The Cornhill lift station also garnered some attention. There's a pass-through agreement with Sonterra, so all the flow that goes to that Cornhill lift station has to go into the Sonterra system, flow through their system, then exit back into the city system. That time it's in the Sonterra system is under agreement, and that agreement is set to expire in 2027. I've listed some options there. Essentially, it's talk with Sonterra or find an infrastructure-based solution, either with or without Sonterra's help. The third lift station that garnered notice was the Home Place lift station. It's got, in our estimate, 4 to 8 years left on it if growth continues in the Home Place service area. We've offered a few recommendations though. One is to locate a flow monitor upstream of it so you can just monitor what's going on there. Calculated flow and actual flow are different things. So in my mind, it would be worth monitoring that so you can have a small expense of watching something that may or may not need to, or at least delay its need for improvement. You can also review pump run times with some of the SCADA monitoring that the city has access to. That's already in place. And then, of course, the final recommendation is just the continued planning for the relief of that lift station, as is the ultimate goal. So this is just, I mean, don't need to look at it too closely, but this is just an example of the final map that comes at the back of the wastewater plan. There are a number of, or certainly a lot of extra information in the report itself, but again, there's 4 pages at the front of it that's an executive summary if you need a refresher at any point, or staff needs to look at something. There's just a few pages at the front that summarize the key points of it. And of course, this serves as a good visual guide for where the city needs to head. Color codes the projects, names and numbers them, gives estimates to how much they cost and when they need to be completed. So in the 5-year project window, the key items, the big ticket one is the expansion of the wastewater plant. The second item would be increasing service to the I-35 corridor. Some of that's being accomplished through developers like the CRG wastewater line that's going from I-35 and future CRG development down to Belcomies. So that's part of that $9.6 million that developers are projects that the developers are providing for out of the CIP. The city has about $3 million of recommended linear improvements. That's very much tied to Walmart, that area. And then, of course, the big ticket item is the wastewater plant, which is, the expansion is potentially $40 million is the current estimate. And I think the design engineer also has an estimate available that is in a very similar magnitude. So, it's a similar story. There's substantial growth going on in Gerald. But there is a path forward, and there are certainly opportunities to meet those growth needs. Had these agenda items out of order. Yes, I appreciate y'all surviving both of those presentations on the same day. That's an immense amount of information, I know, but it's.
Well presented.
Thank you, appreciate that. Do y'all have any questions at this time that you would like answered? I'm certainly always available for staff or whoever needs me. I'm happy to be a resource for the city. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Moving on, agenda item 4, we're going to adjourn into closed session. Agenda item 4.1, consider executive session as authorized by 551.071 and 551.072. Government code related to consultation with attorney regarding pending or contemplated litigation and the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property to wit. We got A, utility and development agreement with Cielo Gardens LP in the Bronx. B, purchase of water infrastructure from Gerald Swetner Water Supply Corporation serving Old Town and property south of County Road 305. And C, raw groundwater supply agreement with County Road 314 Group LLC. With that, we are adjourned at 8:24 p.m. All right. City Council is now back in session at 9:43 p.m. Agenda item 5, open session to consider, discuss, deliberate, and take action on any items discussed in executive session. And I don't think we have anything. So we have no action on 5.1, and with that, City Council is adjourned at 9:44 p.m.